Beekeepers, it's all about getting through winter, and my secret is winter hive inspections here in Michigan. January 16th. I've been doing this for several years. Been beekeeping for over 10, and I started realizing I needed to know what was going on with colonies during the winter. So I do bee inspections in that room, and some of the issues I've had, if you've been following me for a while, last winter I had a dog that had epilepsy, and I wanted to be with her when she had her seizures. So I didn't do a winter treatment last winter to get rid of the varroa mites. And here's a room where I had my colonies when it wasn't really cold, but it wasn't really warm enough to do anything with them outside. I stored them in here. But what happens is, if you stack your hives and you have so many in here and you can't get to them, you can't check them. I did find a couple dead colonies in here as I was moving these out. And where did I move them to? Well, anyway, what I was saying about my dog was last winter I wanted to be with her when she had her seizures, so I didn't do any treatments during winter for acyclic acid. I'm sure I went into summer with some varroa mites, and then the commercial bees come back, and the robbing was really bad in August and September, and all my colonies picked up varroa mites, and I used acyclic acid. I'm using all that quick heating vaporizer now, and it takes a long time to get rid of them. And my queens, because December was warm, my queens are still laying in December. Okay, this is, I'll turn this light on real quick. This is where I moved some of them in here, and I do have a heater in case it does get cold. It was 0 the other night, and it started cooling off in here. And I try not to stack my colonies, but sometimes I don't have the room. Ideally, I'm getting ready to build a larger room here. This would be one big room, and I want to have shelves all the way around where I can stack the hives, and then I could actually open them up and just to know they're okay. And I removed the shims. I don't use a shim right now. I'm not using shims in the center, between the deep and the medium, because you put your sugar in there, and what happens is majority of my colonies, 90% of my colonies are brand new colonies, and they didn't get very big, and they didn't fill the deep full of honey. So there's no honey in the deep, so they're not down in the deep, and they won't go down. They won't go down for the sugar. They're more likely to go up. They go up on top of the hive where the heat is. And I disagree with Vinyl Farm about super insulating a hive and closing up the upper entrances. They need ventilation. See, I go through and I check every morning, and I actually have to move. I'll move this, check that, and move, and then I move them. Actually, check every one of them, and I do have a red light in here, so I don't turn on the light all the time. The red light, and I'm working on this room, and you see, this is like what I want to do in the future: a shelf where I can stack, and I can look. So anyway, let me pause. All right, this is the other room where I do my actual inspections. And the flaw with this room is it used to be the deck to my house. So I have a space underneath the floor, but it is insulated, and I have hot water heat in here. But it would have been better if I had a room that was actually on the ground, because the cold air gets underneath, and it will actually freeze my heating system if it's not circulating, because I don't use glycol. But anyway, this is a colony that I found out there in that room in the garage that ran out of honey. What happened was, I moved them, didn't look at them the next day, got busy with other stuff. So they were 2 days since I had last checked them, and they were up on the sugar. And I knew how you have all your bees up on the sugar. Some of them won't eat sugar, but this colony did, and some others that I've noticed will eat the sugar. They try to eat the sugar in a desperate attempt to not starve, but they need the honey. They'll starve without honey in the hive. So what I do first is I've already done this, and I've realized the screen has a hole in it. So I replace the screen. What I do is I set the super medium, deep, or whatever you want to call it, a hive body. I'll set that on the outer cover. Try to keep the bees contained. You don't want them out right away. I'll take the screen over here to the corner of the room, scrape off the dead bees, and if the bottom board has a lot of crap in it, I will take that and scrape it off. But if it doesn't have a lot of crap, I don't scrape it off. I'm trying to save time. So then after I've done that, and then I'm using pieces of cloth to plug up the entrances. And this right here, I was in a hurry the day that I had a bunch of colonies that needed help right away, and I forgot to keep track. This one right here was on a deep, and I only had 3 deeps with numbers on it that I didn't write down on the medium. So it's one of these 3. So that's what happens is if you're in a hurry, you don't take proper notes. You don't know which queen this actually is. And this colony did lose some bees, you see. Some of the bees died because they starved enough that I actually brought them in the house. I will bring them in the house. I brought them in, inserted some honey in them and put a hairdryer on them. Tried to revive them because some of them weren't moving, but some were. It was really close to being completely chilled. And I've saved a lot of colonies that were chilled. That's the problem. You guys think your colony is dead. Try to warm it up with a hairdryer on a low setting first. And because this colony was up on the inner cover on there, I couldn't tell if they had sugar or queen. The sugar, I tried to remove the sugar so it doesn't go down to the bottom screen, but we'll skip that. So I wasn't able to check for the queen because it's easier to check for a queen when a colony is clustered on the frames, and that's why you want to keep them cool. So they'd be more likely to stay on the frame. This is the honey that I put in here. This happened 2 days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago. And like I said, my queens are still laying. And they still have a queen. And I could check my notes. I have notes as to which... I did 150 new colonies last summer. So if one of those 3 numbers fits into this list, then I know it's a new queen. And what I did last fall is all my old queens that had old tattered wings, and I knew they were old. I went ahead and I killed them because domino cane sugar got to be too expensive, and I didn't do syrup because of the expense of the sugar and because of the issue of the robbing. So I didn't feed syrup. I have more new colonies than I had older colonies, so I knew they wouldn't have a lot of honey. And another thing I'm going to stop doing is during June, when my colonies have extra honey, I've been putting them in new colonies, and I think they're getting robbed out by the commercial bees. Homemade frames, sometimes they crack and just... Some of them are getting robbed out August and September, losing the extra honey I gave them. So from now on, if I have extra supers of honey, I'm going to put them in storage. And I thought that you give them a little extra honey, maybe they'll grow faster. But if they're getting robbed out, that's not good for them either. So just like that. And how many bees came out? 3, 4? Okay, and then I'll pause this. Okay, this is me last summer. Paper got torn. But I know I reached 264 counting all the mating nukes I had. It says 256 here. So here it is, September. And I wasn't able to do any inspections in August. And I discontinued most of my mating nukes end of July. So here it is. You know, in September I had 213, and because robbing was an issue and varroa mites were starting to be a big issue too. So then October, here's mid-October, 200 colonies, because I've started not just losing colonies, I started eliminating. Oh yeah, right here in November I started eliminating. Went through and looked for old queens that had a list of old numbers. and I checked down here to make sure the number wasn't a new one. I eliminated the queen, and then after a day or so, I combined that. See, I've been killing a few, trying, because I knew I wasn't going to have enough honey for all these colonies to get through winter, so I was killing queens to take the honey from that colony and combining that colony with some small ones. So here we are in December, and I made a quick thing here. I haven't had very many dead outs. To me, if I have a colony of bees that doesn't have a queen, I don't consider that a dead out or a complete loss. I didn't lose the colony. I combined the colony with small colonies. So here's how many colonies have I had that actually run out of honey because I missed it and I wasn't able to save them? 5. And colonies, because they run out of honey, they get chilled. And here are the list of colonies that I found chilled that I was able to save. And there's others that I forgot to write down, and there's no way I can remember which ones now. And then colonies that are too small. This is after the beginning of December, so this is during the winter. Colonies are too small, I'll kill the queen. If I don't like the queen looks like she's not worth anything, I'll kill her. And then I found 2 colonies with VQs, and a couple of my colonies got small. Apparently I didn't know how small they were, and I treated for acetic acid with that Oxyvap 120, and later on I found them dead. Small colonies can't handle acetic acid treatment very well. And then colonies that were dead that I don't know why they died, I don't have any. And then here, these are colonies that had honey but failed to move to the honey, because what happens is I try to move the brood. If that queen has brood, I started moving the brood to the side and putting honey in the center. And then when I noticed, I didn't realize this at the time, the colony will stay with the brood and they won't go to the honey. So what I started doing now is I find the brood with a queen, keep her in the center, put her in a frame of honey, and then put the rest of the frames of brood or bees, so that you're basically splitting up the cluster in half, sticking honey in the center, because moving the brood to the side, thinking the bees will go to the honey, that's more important. Apparently, it's not more important. Honeybees are stupid. They don't realize going into winter, they don't need the brood anymore. They need to eat the honey. So they think the brood's more important than honey, and it's too cold. They can't move over to it. And the other thing is, I'm trying to move all my darker frames. If they don't have anything on them, I move them to the outside and try to bring in the new frames, because if they're contaminated with the toxic chemicals that crop farmers use, I want them over here. I don't have time to take them out and insert a new frame, so I just try to keep them away from the cluster. And what I notice is if the varroa mites get out of control, this is just a theory, if the varroa mites get out of control and you're using acetic acid and it takes a long time to get rid of the varroa mites, I think the bees are getting the viruses from the varroa mites, and even after the bee gets the virus, they're transferring that virus to other bees, because bees are constantly swapping fluids with each other, honey or whatever. They're constantly swapping fluids with each other. So I think that virus, once it gets in your colony, it's hard to get rid of it, because your bees constantly are passing fluids between each other. Even after you eliminate all the varroa mites, your bees are still getting sick. That's why I remove the dead bees every time I do a hive inspection. And then at the end of the day, I get this stuff and I throw it out on the ground into a pile. And then after winter, I'm going to disc it. So like what I was saying here, these are colonies here that had honey, but they failed to go to the honey because they weren't warm enough, for one thing. Even if they were warm enough, what happens is they'll send a few bees over to get the honey, and then those bees will come back to the colony. They won't actually leave the brood and go to the honey to be ready for the colder temperatures. I've noticed that too. So of this group here, I was able to save 2 of them by heating them up with a hairdryer and moving the honey around and moving the bees. It would be nice to get rid of the brood frames, but sometimes, like I said, I don't have time to put in different frames. I'm doing this stuff. I've done as many as 18 hive inspections in this room in one day. Every colony in here has been inspected. And when I find a small colony, I'm going to show you the small ones right now. I put them over here in this wall. The thermostat is right here. So this is the wall towards my house. And I imagine this wall here is actually the warmest place. And then that right there is second. But over here, it gets cold. Well, how I do ventilate this room, is I control the screen. When it's really cold at night, I keep it like that. And I'll leave a crack here. You can't close it up. You get water on the windows and it freezes and it makes a great big mess. So I watch the thermostat on the wall. During the day when the sun's out, or if it's in the 40s outside, these bees get really active. Will actually heat up this room, so I have to go all the way down like that, and then sometimes I have to leave that door open to get airflow through here because the screen is kind of restricting. But right now it's like 10 degrees out right now, so you just have to estimate with your best judgment. You know, you can't do hive inspections in a dark room. And for me to move in a hive every single time I want to inspect it's a pain in the ass. It takes too long. So I have to have my hives here ready for my inspections when I have time to do them. And these are the small colonies. And how do I save small colonies? Well, this colony right here, out of the 120 colonies I have right now, 77 was the largest. This right here is the only colony that I have that could survive outside in the temperatures right now. And I knew going into winter that the deep, this is a new colony, the deep didn't have any honey. So I gave them 2 mediums, and none of them were neither were full of honey. They had a little, like 3 or 4 frames in each one. And rather than queen stop laying, she continued to lay. So this medium's full of bees and this medium's full of bees. And I checked 2 days ago and I couldn't find the queen. So I went ahead and I split the mediums. And how do I know where the queen is now? I was fairly successful at doing this. You hear the noisy medium right there? That's telling me that more than likely the queen's down here. So I'm going to inspect this colony now. I'm not going to do it a video. I don't want to make a longer video. And I'll find the queen. As soon as I find the queen, I know this one doesn't have a queen. Because sometimes you could be wrong. So then I'll take these frames. This is fairly large cluster of bees. I'll take these frames and divide them up amongst the small colonies. I've already done this group down here. This right here was this stack here. And the other thing I do, right now this floor is very cold. Bees get out, they end up on the floor. They'll move around for 2 or 3 minutes. Then after that, they'll stop moving. And after I just did these 4 here, I just inspected these 4 here before I did the video. And I will actually sweep up the bees and put them in a container. But I won't put the container in the house until I'm ready for the bees to warm up. And then sometimes if it's not cold outside, the bees will move around and you know, they'll be moving around, flying around, pooping all over the place. And then I won't sweep them up. I'll leave them there until I'm done doing inspections at all of the colonies I want to inspect. Then when I get done doing the inspections, and then the other thing is, when I'm doing my inspections, I keep this closed because I end up getting bees in there, and they can get out, and I lose them. So I'll do a bunch of inspections. When I'm done doing inspections, and then I'll start sweeping the bees with that broom, and I'll gather them up, and then some of them will be flying, and it takes me like 15, 20 minutes to get all the bees up. So this right here was in the house for a while, and they're starting to get active. Don't put cold bees in a colony unless it's actually in a actual warm room. This is not warm enough in here. So these aren't ready yet. These need to go back into the house. So let me put this, what I do is, my wife's allergic to bees, so what I do is I just simply open this door up. You see that pretty girl there? And I put the bees there and let them warm up. So these right here are the smallest colonies. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of each one of those bees, a little bit of those bees in each one of these. This one is still alive. But I actually, before I put the bees in, I will check for a queen. If they don't have a queen, the queen's dead. There's no point. Let's see, they're still alive. Sometimes if they don't move, you gotta blow on them. And there's the other one. And then this right here was at the bottom. The other thing I do, if you know a cluster of bees is larger than the others, because the cold air goes down, the floor is cold, so all the hives on the floor are actually larger. So this one right here is a larger colony that still need bees though. See? And you see how they don't move around too much. So that's my secret. I do winter hive inspections. I've done 80 some, almost maybe 90. I've done 90 different colonies. Some of them I've inspected twice. And I know my bees are dying from the toxic chemicals in the hive. So I have inspected those in the corner probably over a week ago. And I know as soon as I get this done, I'm going to be moving these out. And I'm going to be inspecting those colonies because I know those colonies are shrinking. All colonies are shrinking. What you do is if you make sure you clean the bottom screen board and you get all the bees out. The next time you inspect that hive, if you see a lot of bees in that bottom screen, you know your bees are still sick and they'll die. And that's why I don't leave colonies outside during the winter, because it doesn't matter how well you insulate a hive vinyl farm. If your bees are dying from the toxic chemicals in the hive, and if you wrap that hive with insulation, close up the entrances, they're not getting any fresh air. The chemicals in that hive are worse than it would if you had air circulation going through there, you know. Not everybody lives in an environment where they don't have crop farmers and there's no toxic chemicals. I happen to have crop farmers surrounding me. My wife doesn't have breasts anymore thanks to these crop farmers. So I have trouble keeping bees alive, and this is the only way to keep them alive is they actually have to do winter inspections and give small colonies that are dying, give them bees to try to get them going. But you don't want to take too many bees away from the larger colonies and have a risk losing that large colony. This right here, too large. I know if I would have left this alone, they would have eaten all the honey before spring. Okay, and that's the other thing. You never know when it's going to warm up. So let me pause. Okay, in conclusion, these are the 3 things that make it difficult to keep honeybees alive, and I've put them in order to the most important, or the most difficult thing for honeybees to get is the toxic chemicals, and then the varroa mites. See, the varroa mites, I can get rid of the varroa mites. I can't get rid of the toxic chemicals, and these 2 right here will make your colony shrink. It makes your colony sick. And then you get the weather. You'll have a lot of rain in the spring and they won't be able to go get the food they need. Or during the middle of winter, it'll be really cold. Or towards the end of winter, when they need to be out doing their flights, it'll be too cold. And then something for you guys to think about. You guys are being deceived by the deep state. Trump... They were after Trump. They're trying to make you think that Trump is an underdog and that they don't want him to be president. That's the whole trick. They took Trump out of the second term, didn't allow him to get a second term, so they saved him so they could use him later. So they stuck in Biden. They knew people would be pissed off. They didn't want a change. So they saved Trump to use him again later. In that January 6th resurrection, that was all staged. So Trump's another scam, and I found somebody on YouTube that has a lot of good people on his show. It's Dialogue Works, and this right here explains how this country works. It's basically the money flows to the owners, the 1%, and then you have the managers that keep the livestock. We are the people, the livestock. We're the source of income for all these people here above us. The managers, that includes the government, the media, and the schools. They're all about controlling the livestock, okay? And it's why you can't get decent news on mainstream media. And this COVID vaccine and the COVID itself, the coronavirus itself, is all to make money. And they don't want too many people. They want to keep the population under control. They don't want to pay you your retirement, basically. They want to use you while you're young so they can make money. When you get sick, they make money. If you're working for them, they make money. Everything you do, they're making money. And when you get old, they don't want to pay you your retirement. They don't want you to be around. So that's what COVID was. Governor Whitmer in Michigan, when that COVID broke out, she put all the people that were sick in nursing homes. And what was that supposed to do? That was supposed to wipe out a bunch of older people, okay? That's all I got to say. And I made a video because some people are still concerned about honeybees and they say that my help is helping them, so that's why I made another video. But in general, Americans are stupid idiots and they're dishonest and you can't trust them. They're a bunch of liars. Okay? Thank you.